right, how we doing tonight, guys? My name is Adam Byrne, and I am the National Recruiting Director here at Jenkins Elite. And we're going to start talking a little recruiting with our 2024 class, the juniors. Before we get started, just want to let you guys know ahead of time, if you have any questions with any of this, feel free at the end or any time to reach out to me at AB Jenkins Elite on Twitter, or if you'd like to email me, my email is adam.byrne@jenkinselite.com. But without further ado, let's get rolling and let's get you guys prepped for going into your junior year. For most of us, this is the first real playing time we're getting on the varsity level, so this is exciting times. So we're just going to start off. Like I said, football season's finally here. Most of us, we just had our first game last week. Unless you're from Alaska or Hawaii, then you probably had your third game last week. But no, excited for all of us here, and we want to capitalize on this opportunity. And the biggest way to do that is staying organized and being prepared and ready. So the following are a few points of emphasis to help you along the way. And here we go. So just kind of understanding the college football landscape. There's kind of several different levels, and each level has its own kind of little differences, right? So we have Division I to start out with, and in Division I, there's FBS, so Football Bowl Series, and Football Championship Series, right? So FBS and FCS. So our FBS schools, those are our classic large schools: Alabama, Clemson, Colorado, Texas, Oregon, Hawaii, what have you. And then you have FCS, right? Which these are a little smaller schools, but still bigger ones. So like Sam Houston State, for example, Eastern Washington, North Dakota State, schools like that. Then we have our Division II schools, which again are more like, and if if I'm talking about guys in Colorado, these are RMAC schools like Fort Lewis College, Colorado School of Mines, CSU Pueblo, or if we're in Texas, all the Lone Star schools, like A&M Commerce, West Texas, schools like that, right? And then finally, we have Division III schools. Division III schools, those are schools like University of Wisconsin Whitewater, Linfield out in Oregon, Mary Hardin Baylor in Texas, right? And then we have NAIA, which those are schools like the College of Idaho, Southern Oregon. We got Baker in Kansas, smaller schools like that. And then finally junior colleges, which there's a mess of both in California, Kansas, and then in the South in Mississippi and Alabama, right? So just to start off with, we're going to kind of go FBS, right? So FBS, that's the one. Those are the schools that we see every Saturday, or once it's college football, they play games on Fridays and Thursdays now too. But with that, the big deal with that is you have 85 full scholarships, right? And that means you don't have to pay for a dime, you don't have to pay for a piece of paper, a pencil, tuition, everything's covered. So there's 85 of those full scholarships, and there's 120 roster spots, right? And now that's fluctuating a little bit right now because we have so many guys with that extra year of COVID, but that's going to be pretty standard, right, at that 120 spots, right? And so if you're at that level, which is about, I think, 1% to 2% of all high school football players in the entire country, that's, like I said, you're not paying a dime. Now, the rest of these schools, starting off with FCS, Division II, and Division III, these schools you can get a full ride, but most of the time they're packaging your scholarship. And what I mean by packaging your scholarship is they're dividing it by both your athletic and your merit and your need base as far as how they're going to help you pay for school. So example being FCS has 63 total scholarships divided by 85 players. So essentially you have 63 total scholarships that you can give to 85 guys in your program, and you're capped at a roster of 120 spots. So how that works is, example being, say I get a half scholarship for football, and then I could get half of my money due to academic scholarship. So it's technically you count as a half football scholarship, but you're still on a full ride just as you would be at an FBS school, right? Next, after that we have Division II. Division II has 36 full scholarships divided, and you can divide them by as many players as you want. And Division II and Division III, Division II, Division III, and NAI all have uncapped rosters. And the reason that is because Division II, III, and NAI schools are usually smaller schools. So they don't like to have a cap on the roster because ideally, the more guys you have on your roster, that's the more kids that are going to your college. So you're helping bumping those numbers outside of just the sport itself. So again, Division II, that's 36 scholarships divided however way you want. Division III, which is a big deal. This is the only NCAA level where there's no athletic scholarships. So everything's going to be based off of your academics, your merit, and your needs, right? And then finally we have NAI. NAI has 24 total scholarships, divided any way you want, and also has an uncapped roster. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to use social media, right? Social media can be our biggest tool or our biggest enemy if we're reckless with it. I cannot stress this enough how many just great football players get pulled off of boards because of things they do on social media, right? Because in today's, recruiting world, they're going to use Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Any way they can reach out to you, they're going to try to, right? And so we really want to make sure that the stuff we're posting is how we want to be represented to these coaches, right? Because every program is going to scour all our social media to see what our interests are and the image we're projecting, right? And that includes not just what we're retweeting or sharing, on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. It also is like our likes, right? Because you can go and see what someone likes on both Twitter and Instagram. And so those are things we still you want to make sure we're being careful of, right? Just because you didn't post it doesn't mean that someone's going to see that you didn't like that image or that video. And we want to always make sure we're putting our best foot forward. Remember, there's no easier way to get pulled off a board than being reckless with our social media. And again, multiple platforms, it just makes us easier to talk to coaches or easier to get your film seen, right? So again, we always want to think about having that Twitter, especially. That's how a lot of coaches will reach out to you. But even on Instagram is still not a bad choice either, right? So, speaking of Twitter, how do we build a bio? So, the biggest thing with social media, and especially Twitter, is we want to make sure we can be easily found, right? So, we want to use our real name, not some nickname someone's given us or a nickname we've given ourselves. We want it to be Adam Byrne, right? Something simple. Then next, we want to have our class year, which is extremely important because depending on your class year, your recruiting rules are completely different, right? So especially junior year, this is a big time for us because now we're old enough where these coaches can make contact with us and we can actually have a conversation with them. So we want to make sure we're putting class of 2024 in our bio so they know that we're open for business and we can talk to them. Because if you're a sophomore, coaches still can't reach out to you directly. Next, we want to have our entire high school name on there, right? We don't want to just put SHS. There's a million SHSs, probably not a million, but a good, couple thousand in across the country, right? So we want to make sure we're spelling out the name of our high school. So if it's Rocky Mountain High School, don't put RMHS, put Rocky Mountain High School, right? Next, we want to put our position or positions we play, followed by our GPA and test score, and that comes into again when we're talking about. We're going to get packaged right by these different schools. So they want to know what roughly your GPA or test score is, because then they have an idea of one, if you can get into school, and two, what type of academic money that you'll qualify for. Next, we want to put our location, because just because we put Rocky Mountain High School doesn't mean that we know what Rocky Mountain High School we're at. Are we at Rocky Mountain High School in Meridian, Idaho? Or are we in Rocky Mountain High School in Fort Collins, Colorado? So we want to make sure we put our location of the actual city we're in. Then with our profile picture, right, we want it to be a close-up of our face or just us and our gear. So, again, we can be easily found, We have a lot of guys, mostly we're based in Colorado. And a lot of our Colorado guys, they might have a picture of them snowboarding or something. And they're from, a mile away and you can't even tell who they are. So make sure you can be easily spotted, right? And that they can recognize you. Background pictures, not as important, but again, we want it to be something smart, right? We don't want it to be something that might turn someone off to us and think, all right, I don't know if this is the type of guy I want in my program. And then finally, we want to link that highlight, which we can copy and paste into our bio, and that way they can just click it and go right to our Huddle film, right? Or if we don't have Huddle, you can link it to YouTube, wherever you would like to link your stuff to, you can. But Also with that link, we always want to make sure we're updating that link, right? We don't want it to be our film from like 2 years ago or even last year. We want it to be our most recent link. All right, speaking of highlights, how do we make a highlight? We want to start with an info slide, right? We want to put our name, our phone number, our grad year, test scores, GPA, right? After that, we're thinking of how long should our video be. If it's an end of the year video, we're thinking like 3 to 5 minutes. If it's our mid-season video, then we're thinking, 2 to 3 minutes. You only need, 10, 15 plays tops, right? Because again, this is a highlight video. All these coaches are going to watch a full game film of you. They just want to see a snapshot of you. So you don't need a 10-minute highlight, right? So we want to prioritize our best plays that highlight our skill set or skill sets, right, the most. So it doesn't have to be necessarily in order like all offense and then all defense. Just put your best plays forward and include a variety of different plays because you want to show all the things you can do. So, if you're a receiver, we want to see more than just your go routes, right? We want to see your routes underneath so then that way we can see that you can do more than just run in a straight line. Or if you're a quarterback, we don't want all our screen plays. We want to show off, our long ball, intermediate, short passes, include some running in there as well. So, again, we want to highlight what makes us stand out. That's our goal, right? Next, we want to show plays made against our best competition possible. Because ultimately, when we're at the next level, we're playing better competition than we ever have before. So we always want to try to make sure we're putting in our highlights and clips of teams that like the best teams we're playing. We don't want it to all just be kind of our warm-up games because eventually, you're going to have to go play guys that are at another level. So we want to make sure we're showing clips of our best teams we're playing against. Also, we don't need any music or transitions or anything like that. These coaches are watching hundreds of kids a day, potentially. So they're going to have your stuff on mute anyway, and the transitions, you're just wasting your time. And then once you're finished, again, it's just a rough draft. So make sure you watch it and reach out to your coach. Reach out to your coach beforehand before you post it because he'll have some different opinions of how you want to do stuff, right? So also, another thing we want to be cognizant about is if we're a quarterback, we don't need to circle ourselves before every play. If you're the quarterback, I know you're always the guy right behind the center, right? So you don't need to circle yourself before the play or during the play if you're a quarterback because especially if it's during the play, that might cut off your drop or your throwing motion and they won't be able to see you in stride and kind of see how you're athletic. Now, if you're not a quarterback and you're an interior lineman or you're a receiver that moves around a lot, make sure you're highlighting yourself pre-snap. We never want to highlight ourselves in the middle of the play, right? Because again, that kind of freezes that film and we don't want that. So again, if you're a quarterback, no circle. If you're not a quarterback, circle pre-snap. All right, next we're going to talk about different kind of camps, and there's several different ones you can see, right? So right now, just an example, we have exposure camps. These are football camps. They're not affiliated necessarily with a college or university directly. Example of these are like the Rivals camps, Elite 11, the Opening, etc. Honestly, these are the camps they're good to maybe go to one, but I would only go to maybe one a year. This isn't exposure camps for the most part, are not what we want to have our focus on. Our main focus should be at college camps. And these are college camps, and these are held directly on college campuses, and they're ran by that college staff themselves, right? And we want to make sure I'm always a big proponent of going to college camps that are on the campus because then I get to go to campus, I get to see that campus, I get to see that town, get to see the facilities, meet some of the players, the coaches. That way I can really decide, hey, can I see myself going to the school for 4 to 5 years? And so going to those college camps, that's allowing us to build a rapport with those coaches and then also kind of be able to see firsthand if this is a place I'm interested in, right? Next, we have mega camps, and mega camps usually involve multiple college coming together, a ton of kids. And these are like those camps, you'll see them, in Texas, California, in the Midwest, and there'll be 70 different colleges at these camps, and they're usually going to be hundreds of athletes. But the nice thing about that is you're going to have multiple colleges from multiple levels coming to evaluate you, right? Next, we have combines. Combines are just like you see every spring with the NFL. They're going to do your height, weight, speed, jumping ability. You're not really going to do any football. I usually tend to kind of stay away from those for the most part, because a lot of times if you're at a mega camp or a college camp, they're going to have you do that anyway. But if you want to do one in the beginning of the year, it's not always bad just to kind of see where you're at. But I wouldn't throw a ton of stock into those combines, right? Then we have showcases, which are similar to combines, but then they throw in a little position-specific drills and some competition as well. Again, showcases are not terrible to go to, but again, I'm always a bigger fan of college camps. And then finally, we have skills camps, kind of like our very own Jenkins Elite camps that we run every summer. And the folks of these camps aren't necessarily about getting exposure. It's about really working on building our skills and technique. So, junior year, things we want to do. I know school just started for us all about a week or two ago, and so these are some things we want to make sure we're doing. Have we met with our high school counselor? Because that high school counselor is going to be very important to us, right? Because they're going to help us make sure we get our NCAA approved schedule, which I'll go over here in the accompanying slide. But also, that's who's going to be sending your transcript out to coaches when colleges request your transcript. And sometimes colleges and coaches will do that without you even knowing. But when they request your transcript, it's your high school counselor is the one who's sending them, right? So we always want to make sure we're taking care of our counselor. Our counselor and our head football coach, those are the guys or gals that are really important in our recruiting process when we're in high school, all right? Third, we want to fill out our SMART goal sheet, which we should all receive in our Jenkins Athletic Recruiting Guide. Again, we're trying to make reasonable goals, building towards something, right? And so I always want to have that goal sheet to kind of guide you, right? So we're not kind of just listless. We want to be kind of focused at something. Next, we want to talk to our high school football coach about playing in college. You want to let your coach know, hey, playing at the next level is something I'm really interested in. If some of us go to really large high schools, and you might fall between the cracks if that coach doesn't know that you're, when coaches are coming in and out of the building, if you don't tell him, hey, I want to play in college, he might forget to tell you, hey, there's a coach that's coming by this afternoon. So again, always make sure we're talking to our high school coach. Next, we want to update or create our NCAA certification account, and I'll take you through the steps on that and why that's important. But we can't take any visits, or we can't actually sign and commit to a school until we have that certification come out fixed or finished. Finally, we want to register and take our ACT or SAT. This is important. Now, obviously, since COVID, a lot of colleges have kind of gone away from making tests mandatory. You see a lot more testing optional options when we're applying to schools, but ultimately, we want to still take that SAT or ACT because some of us are better at taking tests, or some of us are better in class. So it's just another way for us to help build that academic prowess and help us out, because again, that's going to help us with our packaging as far as our scholarships down the road. Next, we want to build our highlight film, and we just talked about that last slide, right? We want to make sure that we have our highlight film dialed, that our coaches watched it, or you can also feel free to send it to me and I'll look at it and I'll tell you what I think of it as well, right? Finally, then we want to make our full year recruiting plan. That's really important as a junior year, because once we're a junior, we can really get out there and talk to coaches as opposed to when we're an underclassman. So we want to make that full year recruiting plan. We want to figure out, all right, hey, these are the camps I want to go to in the summer. Maybe these are the campuses I would like to visit in the spring, or games I would like to attend, to check out and see if this is a school I would like to go to. So we want to make sure we're organized with our recruiting plans, and that way we can make sure we're getting the most out of our summer and our summer and fall, because those are really heavy recruiting times for us, right? And then finally, we want to update our athletic resume every year. And again, we have our athletic resume that's also in our Jenkins Elite recruiting guide. And we just want to always make sure we have our athletic resume up and ready to go so we can send that to coaches. Next, we're going to be talking about some college visits. So there's two different types of college visits, right? We have unofficial visits, which are self-paid, unlimited, untimed, no timetable, right? So this is like if you and your folks just decide to go to any random school and you're like, hey, I'd like to go to that campus, right? Maybe I'd like to meet with those coaches, catch a game. Those are considered kind of unofficial visits. And then next we have our official visits. Official visits, this is where it comes down to when we're talking about our NCAA clearinghouse and being registered with that, because we can't take our visits until we've gotten that taken care of. So official visits, those are paid for. You can only take 5 over the course of your high school career. They're standard. They last about 48 hours, so 2 days, right? And you can start taking those in April of your junior year. So a lot of times you'll see guys take that either spring of their junior year, over the course of the summer, or sometime in their senior year, right? Now, when we're at especially with our official visits, they're going to make sure that you're introduced to the staff. You take a tour of campus and the facilities. A lot of times you'll meet with an academic advisor for the major you're interested in, and then you usually will watch a game. If you're in the fall, you'll watch a football game. If it's in the wintertime, maybe you'll go watch a basketball team. You'll also get to meet a bunch of the team, your potentially future teammates, and they'll usually set you up with one guy who's kind of taking you around, and and then finally you're going to sit down with the head coach, and you'll always sit down with the head coach, and this might be the time where he offers you a scholarship, or he kind of talks to you about what you need to do to get a scholarship from them, right? So when we're on these visits, don't be afraid to ask important questions to not only coaches, but the players you're with, especially the players, because the players are always going to be honest with you, because they're in the program and they can tell you what it's like to be a player, right? And again, especially that you want to ask important questions, because this is a big decision we're going to make, and the more questions you ask, the more information you're going to have to ultimately make a good decision, right? We want to think about, how you fit into that program's culture and how does that campus feel. Some people like the idea of going to a giant, huge school, and then all of a sudden they're on a campus with 60,000 other kids, and they're like, I don't know if I like going to a school that's the size of a decent-sized city. So again, that's one thing you always want to think about is how does it feel being in that town, on that campus, and with that program, right? And then finally, the most important part, act professional. This is a job interview, right? And for some of us, this might be our first job interview, but our future is on the line. And this is a very important thing, because college is a 40-year plan, not a 4-year plan. So depending on how you do on these visits, this is going to help potentially set you up. If you go to the school, help set you up for the rest of your life as far as what your job and your job opportunities may be. So make sure we're taking this serious, because there's a lot of kids that will come on visits and they make a fool of themselves and they walk out of there with no scholarship, or a much smaller scholarship than they thought they were going to get before. So make sure we're taking this very serious. Next, we're going to talk about eligibility registration, right? So if you want to play an NCAA sport at a Division I or Division II level, we want to make sure that we're registered with the NCAA Eligibility Center, which is easy enough, eligibilitycenter.org, right? So plan on registering, ideally before your sophomore year of high school, but obviously this is our junior class spiel, so if you haven't registered yet, please do now. It doesn't take very long, right? But we need to make sure we're taking care of that, because if we don't do that, we can't go on our visit and we can't sign on signing day, right? So we got to be certified with the Eligibility Center before that. And then really all you need, like I said, it's pretty simple. You just need a valid email, your basic personal info, your student education history, which is the schools you've been to. So if you've gone to one high school the whole 4 years, pretty easy. If you've transferred a few times, well, then you're going to have to get a transcript from each one of those schools, right? And then sports participation history, and then finally, like anything in life, you got to pay some money. And for the NCAA registration, it's $90. Next, we have our academic requirements, right? And these are our base academic requirements. So we can always aim to do better than this, right? But we're going to start out, first things first, we got to pass 16 core classes. And of those 16 classes, we need 4 English, 3 math, 3 science, 2 social science, a foreign language, a comparative religion or philosophy class, and then 2 additional classes of your choosing, whether that be math, science, social science, an extra year of foreign language, whatever it might be. You need to have at least a 2-3 grade point average. But I'll tell you right now, if you're that low, a lot of coaches are going to be a little leery of you. So we always want to make sure we have a better GPA than that. But that's the bare minimum. Our minimum ACT composite score is 75, and our minimum SAT score, which is just our math and English, is 900. All right, next we're going to talk about our sliding scales. And how the sliding scales work is, this goes back to when we were talking about wanting to take our tests and our test scores, because how this works is the higher our test score is, the lower we can kind of have our GPA. Or the lower our test score is, the higher we're going to need that GPA, right? So really the sliding scales is just meant to make it as most advantageous as possible for us, because everyone learns different and demonstrates that knowledge differently. Some people are good at taking tests, some people are good at schoolwork. But we want to make sure that we got both. But that's why we want to make sure we're always still taking that SAT or ACT. So then we can have a sliding scale, as opposed to if you go testing optional and you just do the GPA, then you have no scale to slide with. Recruiting periods. So we have 4 different types of recruiting periods over the course of a year. We have a dead period, which, pretty self-explanatory. Coaches can't have any in-person contact with you, with recruits or parents, anybody. Dead is dead. Next, we have a quiet period. Quiet periods are, you can only have in-person contact with coaches if they're on campus. So this goes back to why it's advantageous to go to college camps, more so than like showcases and things like that, because you can, if it's a quiet period, there's not going to be coaches at that showcase, but they will be at their college camps, right? Third, we have our evaluation period, which coaches can watch athletes compete in person, visit their school, but they can't talk to you unless they're on campus, right? So if you see somebody, so they're not going to talk to you, at the grocery store, but if you're on campus, so this is a lot of times your evaluation periods are always going to be in the fall, and then usually sometime in the spring. And so that's when you're going to see coaches, on the sidelines of your games, or if it's in the spring, you'll see them kind of going through the halls, and maybe and they're going to try to talk to you or some of your other teammates. And then finally, we have our contact period, which is just as it sounds. All communication between athletes and coaches are permissible, right? So now we're going to kind of take you through the recruiting calendars for FBS, FCS, and D2, right? So recruiting calendars. Here we go. And one thing you'll notice with these recruiting calendars, the higher the level, the more changes there are to the calendar. So the D2 recruiting calendar is much more simplified than the FBS calendar. So starting off right now, currently we are in a dead period for all of one more day. The whole month of August, dead period. And then from there, September 1st through November 26th, so basically football, everyone's regular season of football and some of the playoffs, that's an eval period, right? Evaluation. And then we go to November 27th through the 17th. That's a contact period, right? So it's open season. Coaches can talk to you any which way they would like. Then we have a single day of a quiet period. And then we have a dead period over Christmas because, got to spend time with the family, and so do coaches. Then as soon as that dead period's lifted, so January 13th through the 28th, we have our contact period. Then we have another single day quiet period of January 29th. Followed by a dead period for a couple days of Jan 30th all the way through February 28th. So really the whole month of February is dead again. And then we have another quiet period, which this is a 6-week span between March 1st and April 14th. This is a lot of times when that's kind of the time frame where you'll see a lot of teams are usually in spring ball. So that's kind of why it's that quiet period. And then we have after that, we have a 6-week window of our spring evaluation period, which is April 15th all through all of May. And then once June starts, June 1st through the 26th is a quiet period again. This is when you're going to have all your college football camps are usually in that 26-day span right there in that quiet period where you're going to go on campus and talk to them. And then you have a dead period from June 27th through July 24th. Got to keep the coaches' wives happy. Got to have them back for at least a month before the season starts, right? And then you have a little tiny quiet period at the end of the last week, the 25th through the 31st. And so usually there'll be most D1 schools will try to squeak in one little camp at some point in that time frame. Next, we're at our FCS. And as you notice, that FCS calendar, again, it's simplified, right, compared to our FBS calendar. Now, we're still in a dead period now, and then we're still going to have that same evaluation period as well, which is going to be standard. You'll also see that in our Division II calendar. And then notice we have our contact period again after our eval period, which goes from November 27th through December 17th. We have our single day quiet period, and then we have kind of that Christmas break stretch off again, December 19th through January 12th. Then we have our second contact period, which is January 13th through the 28th, which again, that's a big time as far as recruiting when you're going to and taking on-campus visits, so that's why you're going to see that contact period in there. A lot of times that's when schools are going to have their recruiting weekends and things like that. Then we have another single-day quiet period right there on January 29th. Then we have a very short dead period of January 30th through February 2nd. And then pretty much after February 2nd, right, the rest of the summer, you can have some form of contact with the coach, right? So February 3rd through April 14th, quiet period. And then we have our spring eval, right, which is still that 6-week block from April 15th to May 31st. But if you notice right here, you have a full 2-month quiet period in the summer. So your FCS schools are going to be able to have camps in July, where your FBS schools, that's not really the case, except for that one final weekend, right? Finally, we have our D2 period. We have our D2 calendar. D2, we have our dead period, standard like we had before, right? And then we have our eval period, kind of just the same, right? We got September through pretty much the end of November eval. We have followed by another contact period. This one goes 28th through the 18th. Then we have a very short dead period, right? Compared to the other two, it's just December 19th through the 21st. And then we have then followed by a short contact period of the 22nd through January 8th. And then another small dead period again, which is January 9th through the 11th. And then we have another about 2-week contact period in January, excuse me. Again, this is where we're going to have those recruiting weekends for a lot of schools, right? And then we'll have another 2-day dead period. It's kind of goofy. But literally, the big difference is literally from February 2nd till July 31st. You're going to be able to talk to a coach. We're going to start off with that contact period, which lasts a little over a month, February 2nd through March 6th. And then we're going to have a quiet period, right? From March 7th to April 14th, which again is kind of like that standard spring ball time for colleges. So, most of the coaches are coaching spring ball, so that's why they're kind of staying at home. And then we have our spring eval period again, which is that same 6-week block on all of our calendars, if you notice that. And then much like the FCS calendar, we have the whole 2-month quiet period at the end of our school of that summer, right? So again, you have a longer camp season with our FCS and Division II, all right? Now, contact calendars, right? So contact calendars, we're going to take you through the different types of contact you're allowed to receive from coaches at your different levels throughout the year. So at the Division I, right, when we're talking about recruiting materials or electric correspondence, so like letters, social media, text messages. So you can get camp brochures, questionnaires, and other non-specific recruiting publications at any time. But coaches can really only start truly recruiting you, right, through electronic correspondence September 1st of our junior year. So here this week is when you're really going to start truly getting reached out by these coaches, okay? All right, now as far as phone calls, a coach can call you or your family beginning July 1st after your sophomore year, right? But that's only phone calls. That's not electronic correspondence. So remember, different rules, okay? Off-campus contact. A coach can have contact with you beginning July 7th after your junior year. So again, if you're not on campus, whether that be your high school campus or their college campus, coaches aren't going to be able to talk to you really until that quiet period going into your senior year, right? Unofficial visits, you can take an unofficial visit to you or your family at any college on your own expense anytime, unless it's a dead period. I mean, you can still go up to that college campus, but you're not going to be able to talk to any of those coaches, right? But if you just want to see the school and see some of the facilities, sometimes you can still get away with that. Official visits are official visits. A college can pay for you and up to 2 family members beginning April 1st of your junior year. And again, you can only take 5 visits maximum with that. Division II. So, much like our recruiting calendar, our contact calendars are the same. The higher the level, kind of the more complicated, the more rules there are. As we get lower in level, then they get simplified, right? So you can get camp brochures, questionnaires, non-recruiting publications at any time, and then a coach can really start sending you stuff as far as the June 15th, so that quiet period after your sophomore year. So in other words, since we're juniors, all of you can start getting stuff as far as letters, social media messages, and things from coaches right now. As far as phone calls, it's the same thing as Division I, June 15th after your sophomore year. So we can all start getting phone calls, right? Off campus, a coach can have contact. So this is one of the big differences, right, between Division I is a coach can have contact with you and your family beginning June 15th after your sophomore year. So that's a huge difference as opposed to our Division I calendar, right? And then again, unofficial visits, you can do that anytime with you or your family, unless it's a dead period. Another big difference is our official visit. Now, our official visit, a program can pay for you, not necessarily you and 2 family members, but for you to come visit a college June 15th after your sophomore year, and there's no max visits. Now, official visits in general for Division II schools, I wouldn't expect to get a bunch of those necessarily your sophomore year. It's still going to be usually that same rough time period as you are as Division I, kind of going into that senior year. Maybe some juniors will take some visits, but most of the time with Division II schools, when you get that official, it's either the summer going into your senior year or that fall or winters. All right. Finally, we have Division III. Now, Division III is much different, right? Because there's no skin in the game as far as athletic scholarships, right? So you can receive any kind of printed materials from a Division III school at any time, right? When we're talking about calls from a coach, there's no limit to the calls and when they can get you. So basically, once you're in high school, a Division III school can start calling you, okay? As far as off-campus contact, a coach can have contact with you or your family anytime after your sophomore year. So we're all eligible to be talking to Division III schools if that's the case. Unofficial visit, much like everything else, you can always visit on your own expense. There's not an issue. And then our official visit, a program can pay for your visit for a Division III school at January 1st of your sophomore year, and there's no max visits. Now, traditionally, Division III schools aren't going to do a whole lot of official visits because they don't have the same money necessarily that a Division II or a Division I school has, because you're not getting offered scholarships, right? So that's not necessarily as common. Another thing with Division III schools is a lot of Division III schools are high academic schools, so they're still probably not going to really start recruiting to you until you're like a junior or senior, because they want to see what your GPA is, since ultimately, your academics are what gets you into a Division III school, right? So even though these, you can see like it says sophomore year, in general, it's still probably going to be a little later, and really it's going to be more this is our first year we're talking, right, to those coaches. So with that said, is there any questions, comments, concerns? We have the chat link below if you want to type a question. I'm happy to answer it. Again, my email's right here, adam.burn@jenkinselite.com. I got my phone number as well, 970-903-6858, and my Twitter, which is ab@Jenkins Elite. Also in the chat, if you want to look down there, you can. If you're a Jenkins Elite member, you already have my information, and we can set up a meeting. But I know if we have any guys that aren't members of the program, I have my Calendly calendar below, and you can pick a date and time. where me and your folks can kind of get into more the minutia of this if you guys have any questions. But on that note, like I said, I'll stick around here for a little bit if we have any questions. But thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited for all of us to make the most of our junior year coming up. This is a big year for all of us. Like I said, I'm more than willing to help you guys out, and feel free to reach out to me on any one of those. Again, adam.byrne@jenkinselite.com. My phone number, 970-903-6858. And then finally, that Twitter, AB at Jenkins Elite. Or at AB Jenkins Elite. Thank you guys so much for your time, and you guys have a good one. Good night. Yes. Oh, got a question. Yes, this will be saved, and it should be emailed out as well. Be saved. Dope.